The camera stopped rolling over 60 years ago, but the truth? Well, that's taken a lifetime to come out. At 79 years old, Hayley Mills, the girl with pigtails who captured hearts in Pollyanna, the twins who reunited divorced parents in The Parent Trap, has finally decided to speak openly about the woman who changed everything for her. A woman whose fiery red hair matched her equally fiery temperament. A woman who could silence a room with just a look. A woman whose influence shaped not just a career, but an entire life. That woman was Maureen O'Hara. And what Hayley Mills has to say might just rewrite everything you thought you knew about old Hollywood, about mentorship, about the price young actresses paid for stardom, and about the complicated, beautiful, sometimes painful relationships that happen when the cameras weren't rolling. It's 1960, and a young girl from London is standing on a Hollywood soundstage, trembling. She's just 13 years old, barely a teenager, and she's about to work alongside one of the most formidable actresses in the entire film industry. The girl is Hayley Mills, fresh off her Academy Award-winning performance in Pollyanna, and she's been cast as the lead in Disney's ambitious new project called The Parent Trap. The woman waiting for her on set is Maureen O'Hara, a Hollywood legend who had already battled alongside John Wayne in The Quiet Man, danced with James Cagney, and earned her reputation as one of the toughest, most uncompromising actresses of her generation. This wasn't going to be just another movie. For young Hayley, it was going to be a masterclass in survival. Most people remember The Parent Trap as a charming family comedy about identical twins who meet at summer camp and scheme to reunite their divorced parents. But behind those sunny California scenes and that catchy theme song was a story far more complex, far more intense than anything audiences ever saw on screen. Hayley Mills has spent decades carefully choosing her words about that experience, protecting reputations, maintaining the Disney magic that made her famous. But now, at 79, she's decided the time has come to tell the truth, not to tear anyone down, not to rewrite history with bitterness, but to honor the complexity of what really happened when a child star met a Hollywood warrior, when innocence encountered experience, when two very different women had to become mother and daughter both on screen and off. To understand this story, you have to understand who these two women were. Hayley Mills came from acting royalty. Her father was John Mills, one of Britain's most respected actors, and her mother, Mary Haley Bell, was a successful playwright and novelist. Acting was literally in her blood, but nothing could prepare her for the whirlwind that began when Walt Disney himself discovered her performance in the British film Tiger Bay. Disney saw something special in young Hayley, a quality that couldn't be taught, an authenticity that radiated from the screen. He offered her a 5-picture deal and brought her to America for Pollyanna, a role that would earn her a Special Academy Juvenile Award and make her an international sensation before she even turned 14. Suddenly, this English schoolgirl was one of the biggest stars in the world, her face on magazine covers, her name on every producer's lips. But she was still just a child, navigating an adult world with adult pressures and adult expectations. Maureen O'Hara, on the other hand, was nobody's idea of a child. Born Maureen Fitzsimons in Dublin, Ireland, she had clawed her way to Hollywood success through sheer talent and an iron that refused to bend to anyone. She had trained at the Abbey Theatre, been discovered by Charles Laughton, and arrived in Hollywood with something to prove. And prove it she did. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, O'Hara became known for playing strong, passionate, fiercely independent women who could match any man scene for scene. She wasn't the delicate flower that Hollywood typically celebrated. She was the storm. Director John Ford, who worked with her multiple times, once said she was the only woman in Hollywood who could match John Wayne's intensity, the only actress who wouldn't back down from anyone. O'Hara had survived decades in an industry that was notoriously brutal to women, especially women who refused to play by its rules. She had faced down predatory producers, fought for fair pay, and established herself as someone you did not mess with. By the time The Parent Trap came around, Maureen O'Hara wasn't just an actress. She was an institution. So picture the scene. This 13-year-old girl, still figuring out who she is, about to spend months working in close quarters with a woman who had literally survived Hollywood's golden age by being tougher than almost everyone around her. The setup for The Parent Trap required Hayley to play twin sisters, which meant elaborate camera tricks, body doubles, and endless technical complications that made every scene twice as difficult. It also meant that Maureen O'Hara had to interact with both twins seamlessly, had to make it look natural and effortless even when the process was anything but. The pressure was enormous on everyone involved, but especially on young Hayley, who carried the entire film on her shoulders. One wrong move, one bad performance, and the whole elaborate production would collapse. What Hayley Mills remembers most from those early days on The Parent Trap set wasn't the technical challenges or even the pressure of playing twins. It was Maureen O'Hara's eyes. Those famous Irish eyes that captivated audiences for decades, that had stared down John Wayne and made strong men weak. Hayley remembers how O'Hara would watch her between takes, studying her, evaluating her, seeing things that the young actress didn't even know were there to see. It wasn't unkind, this scrutiny, but it was intense. Maureen O'Hara didn't believe in coddling, didn't believe in false praise or empty encouragement. If you were good, she'd tell you. If you weren't, she'd tell you that too. For a 13-year-old who was still finding her confidence despite her Academy Award, this was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. In her recent reflections, Hayley Mills has described Maureen O'Hara as a force of nature. Those 4 words carry the weight of years of memory, years of understanding what it meant to work alongside someone who lived and breathed that kind of power. O'Hara was strong, direct, utterly professional. But beneath that fiery exterior, there was something else, a warmth, a protective instinct, a genuine concern for the young girl who had been thrust into the spotlight far too early. Maureen O'Hara knew what Hollywood could do to child stars. She had seen it happen too many times, had watched talented young performers get chewed up and spit out by an industry that loved innocence, but had no idea how to protect it. She recognized in Hayley Mills something worth protecting, a talent that needed to be nurtured but also toughened, prepared for battles ahead. The relationship that developed between them during the filming of The Parent Trap was complicated in a way that all meaningful relationships are complicated. On set, they were consummate professionals. Maureen expected excellence, and Hayley delivered it, take after take, scene after scene. The on-screen chemistry between them was genuine because there was real affection there, real mutual respect. But it wasn't the easy, breezy relationship that the publicity photos suggested. O'Hara pushed Hayley, challenged her, refused to let her coast on natural charm or previous success. She demanded that Hayley dig deeper, find more truth in her performance, stop relying on tricks, and start relying on genuine emotion. For a young actress who was still learning her craft, this was sometimes overwhelming. There were moments when Hayley felt she could never measure up to what Maureen expected, could never be good enough to earn that approving nod, that rare smile that said she had gotten it right. But those moments when she did get it right, those were transformative. Hayley Mills has spoken about how one word of praise from Maureen O'Hara meant more than 100 compliments from anyone else, because you knew O'Hara didn't give praise lightly. She didn't deal in flattery or politics. If she said you were good, you were good. If she said nothing, well, that meant you had work to do. This kind of honest, uncompromising feedback was exactly what Hayley needed at that stage of her career, even though she didn't always appreciate it at the time. O'Hara was preparing her not just for one movie, but for a lifetime in the business. She was teaching her that talent wasn't enough, that you needed discipline, resilience, and a spine of steel if you wanted to survive. One of the most revealing aspects of their relationship was how Maureen O'Hara handled the intense pressure that surrounded The Parent Trap's production. The special effects required to create the twin effect were groundbreaking for their time, and every scene with both twins required meticulous planning and execution. Hayley had performed each scene twice, once as Sharon and once as Susan, maintaining distinct characterizations while also ensuring her movements and reactions would match up when the footage was combined. It was exhausting, technical work that could drain the joy out of acting. But O'Hara, who had her own demanding role as a twin's mother, made a point of checking in on Hayley between setups, making sure she was holding up under the strain. She would share stories from her own early career, tales of difficult directors and impossible schedules, not to scare the young actress, but to let her know she wasn't alone in feeling overwhelmed. This was normal. This was what the job demanded. And if Maureen O'Hara could survive it, so could Hayley Mills. There was also a darker side to what Maureen taught Hayley. Lessons about the realities of being a woman in Hollywood. O'Hara had famously spoken out about sexual harassment in the industry long before it was safe or fashionable to do so. She had been propositioned, threatened, and intimidated by powerful men who thought they could take what they wanted. But O'Hara had fought back, sometimes physically, and had built a reputation as an actress who would not be victimized. She made sure Hayley understood that talent alone wouldn't protect her, that there would be people who would try to take advantage of her youth and her success. It was a sobering lesson for a 13-year-old, but it was a necessary one. O'Hara was essentially teaching Hayley how to protect herself in an industry that didn't always protect its most vulnerable members. The famous spanking scene in The Parent Trap has taken on new meaning through Hayley's reflections over the years. In the film, Maureen O'Hara's character spanks one of the twins as punishment for bad behavior. It's played for comedy, but it was also symbolic of the dynamic between the actresses themselves. O'Hara believed in discipline, in consequences, in the idea that real love sometimes meant being tough. She brought that philosophy to her interactions with Hayley. When a young actress wasn't giving her best, O'Hara wouldn't hesitate to say so. When Hayley was being lazy or coasting on charm, O'Hara would call her out. It could sting emotionally in the way that a parent's disappointment stings a child. But it came from a place of genuine care, a desire to see Hayley reach her full potential. Looking back now, Mills understands that O'Hara's toughness was actually a form of love, the kind of love that demands excellence because it believes you're capable of achieving it. Off camera, away from the pressures of production, the relationship between Maureen and Hayley evolved into something more personal. O'Hara would invite Hayley to her home, would cook for her, would share stories about her own family back in Ireland. These moments revealed a different side of Maureen O'Hara, the private woman beneath the public persona. She was funny, warm, deeply sentimental about her Irish roots, and surprisingly vulnerable when she let her guard down. Hayley saw that the fierce exterior O'Hara showed the world was partly a defense mechanism, armor she had developed to survive in a business that could be cruel to women who showed weakness. In these private moments, O'Hara would talk about her own struggles, her own doubts, the times she had almost given up. She wanted Hayley to understand that even the strongest people had moments of fear and uncertainty. The difference was whether you let those moments defeat you or whether you pushed through them. As filming on The Parent Trap wrapped, both actresses knew they had created something special. The movie was a massive success, becoming one of Disney's biggest hits, and cementing Hayley Mills as the studio's top star. Critics praised the film's technical achievements, but also highlighted the genuine emotional connection between Mills and O'Hara, noting that their on-screen relationship felt authentic in a way that elevated the material. That authenticity came from the real bond they had formed, complicated and multifaceted as it was. After the film's release, their relationship continued. Though Hollywood being Hollywood, they didn't work together again. O'Hara's career was taking her in different directions, and Hayley was swept up in the Disney machine, making picture after picture throughout the early 1960s. But Maureen O'Hara's influence on Hayley Mills didn't end when The Parent Trap wrapped. In many ways, it was just beginning. As Hayley navigated the increasingly complicated waters of being a teenage star, she found herself returning to the lessons O'Hara had taught her. When producers tried to push her into roles that didn't feel right, she remembered Maureen's insistence on maintaining artistic integrity. When the pressure of fame became overwhelming, she recalled O'Hara's stories about surviving her own difficult periods. When men in positions of power behaved inappropriately, she channeled O'Hara's fierce refusal to be victimized. Maureen had given Hayley more than acting advice. She had given her a blueprint for survival. The years that followed The Parent Trap were turbulent ones for Hayley Mills. She continued making films for Disney. In Search of the Castaways, Summer Magic, The Moon Spinners, That Darn Cat. But she was growing up, and the innocent roles that had made her famous no longer fit. She fell in love with her director Roy Bolting, a man 33 years her senior, sparking a scandal that rocked both Hollywood and British entertainment circles. Her parents were horrified. Disney was furious. But Hayley was determined to live her own life, make her own choices, even her own mistakes. The relationship eventually led to marriage and a son, but it also effectively ended her Disney career and changed how the public perceived her. She was no longer the eternal child, Pollyanna frozen in time. She was a woman with her own desires, her own agency, her own complicated story. Through all of this upheaval, Hayley thought often about Maureen O'Hara. What would Maureen do in this situation? How would she handle the scandal, the criticism, the sense that her career was imploding because she dared to become an adult? Hayley knew that O'Hara had faced her own share of scandal and gossip, had been linked romantically to various co-stars and directors, had defied Hollywood conventions by being exactly who she wanted to be. O'Hara had shown that it was possible to survive the industry's judgment, to emerge on the other side still yourself, still strong. That example gave Hayley courage during her darkest moments. The two women stayed in touch over the years, though not as regularly as either might have wished. Both had busy careers, families, lives that took them in different directions. But there were occasional phone calls, Christmas cards, moments of connection that reminded them of what they had shared during those intense months on The Parent Trap. When they did speak, O'Hara would always ask pointed questions about Hayley's life and career, never content with superficial answers. She wanted to know if Hayley was happy, truly happy, not just professionally successful. She wanted to know if Hayley was still fighting for herself, still refusing to let the industry define who she could be. These conversations mattered deeply to Hayley, serving as touchstones, reminders of who she was and who she wanted to become. As the decades passed, both women's careers evolved. O'Hara eventually retired from acting in the 1980s, moving to the Virgin Islands with her third husband, aviator Charles F. Blair Jr. After Blair's death in a plane crash, O'Hara gradually withdrew from public life. Though she remained a beloved figure, whenever she did make an appearance, she published her autobiography in 2004, a candid account titled "'Tis Herself," that confirmed many of the stories about her toughness and her refusal to tolerate harassment or mistreatment. The book was a bestseller and reminded a new generation why Maureen O'Hara had been such an important figure in Hollywood history. Hayley Mills, meanwhile, continued acting in film, television, and theater, building a body of work that demonstrated her range far beyond the Disney roles that had defined her youth. She appeared in dramas, comedies, even horror films, always searching for characters that challenged her, that let her explore different facets of human experience. She married and divorced, had children, dealt with financial problems after her family's money was mismanaged, and rebuilt her life multiple times. Through all of these transformations, she carried Maureen O'Hara's lessons with her. Be professional, be strong, be honest, and never let anyone make you smaller than you are. When Maureen O'Hara died in October 2015 at the age of 95, Hayley Mills felt the loss deeply. She released a public statement praising O'Hara's legacy and talent, but the words felt inadequate to capture the complexity of what Maureen had meant to her. How do you sum up in a few sentences a relationship that had shaped your entire approach to your craft and your life? How do you explain to people who only knew the public persona what it was like to know the private woman, to see her vulnerabilities as well as her strengths? Mills realized that the full story of their relationship had never been told. Not really, because she had been too young to fully understand at the time and too protective of both their privacies in the years since. But now, at 79, Hayley Mills has begun to speak more openly about what Maureen O'Hara meant to her and what she learned from their time together. In interviews for her 2021 memoir, Forever Young, Mills dedicated significant space to discussing O'Hara and the Parent Trap experience. She talked about how intimidating O'Hara had been, yes, but also how that intimidation came from a place of expecting excellence rather than trying to tear anyone down. She described O'Hara as both a maternal figure and a mentor, someone who could be nurturing and demanding in the same breath. Most importantly, Mills acknowledged how much of her own strength, her own ability to survive the brutal ups and downs of a long career in entertainment, came directly from lessons O'Hara had taught her. One particular memory that Mills has shared stands out. During a difficult day on the Parent Trap set, when everything seemed to be going wrong, and young Hayley was near tears from exhaustion and frustration, Maureen O'Hara pulled her aside. Instead of giving a pep talk or offering hollow reassurance, O'Hara told her something Hayley never forgot. "This business will break you if you let it. The only way to survive is to be tougher than anything they can throw at you. Not hard, not cold, tough. There's a difference." Hard means you don't feel anything. Tough means you feel everything and keep going anyway. Those words became a mantra for Mills, something she returned to again and again whenever the challenges seemed insurmountable. Mills has also been candid about the aspects of O'Hara's mentorship that were harder to appreciate at the time. O'Hara's refusal to sugarcoat reality could be harsh for a 13-year-old to hear. When Hayley asked if fame would always be this intense, O'Hara told her no, it would get worse before it got better, and she needed to prepare herself mentally for that reality. When Hayley worried about making mistakes, O'Hara told her she would make thousands of mistakes, and that was fine as long as she learned from them. This brutal honesty wasn't what young Hayley wanted to hear, but it was what she needed to hear. O'Hara understood that false comfort would only make the eventual disappointments more painful. Better to face reality head-on, with eyes wide open, prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Looking back now, Mills recognizes that O'Hara was giving her the gift that no one had given O'Hara herself when she was starting out, honest mentorship from someone who had survived the journey. O'Hara had had to learn everything the hard way, through painful trial and error, with no one to guide her through the pitfalls. By sharing her hard-won wisdom with Hayley, she was trying to make the young actress's path a little easier, try and prevent some of the worst mistakes, try to ensure that at least one talented girl would make it through Hollywood with her soul intact. The truth that Hayley Mills is sharing now, at 79, isn't a single shocking revelation or a scandal. It's something more subtle and more profound. The truth about the complexity of mentorship, about the ways we are shaped by the strong women who come before us, about how the toughest love can sometimes be the most important love. Mills is acknowledging publicly what she has always known privately, that Maureen O'Hara was one of the most important influences in her life, that she owes much of her career longevity and personal resilience to lessons learned on that long-ago film set, that the relationship was difficult and beautiful and life-changing in ways that a 13-year-old couldn't possibly have understood. Mills has also spoken about how O'Hara's influence extended beyond just professional advice. O'Hara taught her about dignity, about carrying herself with pride even when circumstances were difficult. She taught her that being a woman in entertainment meant facing unique challenges, but that those challenges didn't have to define you. She taught her that you could be strong without being cruel, could set boundaries without being cold, could demand respect without being disrespectful yourself. These lessons about character, about how to be a person of integrity in an industry that didn't always reward integrity, have guided Mills throughout her life. There's also the question of what the parent trap meant to both women on a deeper level. The film story about twins separated at birth who schemed to reunite their divorced parents resonated with audiences because it tapped into universal desires for wholeness, for family, for connection. But for Hayley and Maureen, the film represented something else, a coming together of two generations of actresses, a passing of the torch, a moment when experience met innocence, and each was changed by the encounter. O'Hara saw in Hayley a reminder of why she had fallen in love with acting in the first place. That pure joy of performance, that uncomplicated pleasure of becoming someone else. Hayley saw in O'Hara the kind of actress she wanted to become. Strong, respected, still working on her own terms decades into her career. The scene in The Parent Trap where the twins and their mother finally reunite as a family has taken on new resonance for Mills in recent years. That moment of recognition, of seeing each other clearly for the first time, of acknowledging the bonds that connect us even across separation. That wasn't just good acting. That was real emotion flowing between two actresses who had formed a genuine bond, who had come to mean something real to each other. When Mills watches that scene now, she doesn't just see her younger self and Maureen O'Hara the movie star. She sees a 13-year-old girl and the woman who taught her how to survive, how to be strong, how to keep going when everything seemed impossible. Mills has been thoughtful about not romanticizing the relationship or presenting O'Hara as some kind of saint. She acknowledges that O'Hara could be difficult, demanding, sometimes impatient with perceived weakness or laziness. She wasn't always warm and fuzzy. She didn't believe in constant praise or emotional hand-holding. She expected you to be a professional, to show up prepared, to do your job to the best of your ability every single time. For a young actress still finding her way, this could be exhausting. But Mills now understands that this was exactly the kind of influence she needed. Too much coddling would have left her unprepared for the realities of the business. Too much protecting would have kept her from developing her own strength. O'Hara's approach, for all its challenges, was ultimately what helped Hayley Mills become not just a child star, but a working actress with careers spanning decades. One of the most poignant aspects of Mills' recent revelations is her discussion of how she wishes she had told O'Hara more explicitly how much she meant to her. When you're young, you don't always recognize the people who are shaping you. You're too busy living your life, making your own mistakes, forging your own path. It's only later, with the perspective that comes from years and experiences, that you can look back and see clearly who mattered, who made a difference, who changed the trajectory of your life. By the time Mills had that perspective, O'Hara was elderly and living far away, and the opportunities for deep, meaningful conversations were limited. Mills regrets not having had one more long talk with O'Hara, not having been able to say clearly and completely, "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me, for challenging me, for refusing to let me be less than I could be. Thank you for your toughness and your warmth, for your honesty and your protection. Thank you for teaching me how to be strong." But perhaps O'Hara knew anyway. Perhaps she recognized that the best thanks wasn't words, but rather the life Hayley lived, the career she built, the strength she demonstrated time and again. O'Hara would have appreciated that kind of thanks, practical, demonstrated through action rather than just spoken. She would have looked at Hayley Mills' 6-decade career, her resilience through scandals and setbacks, her continuing passion for her craft, and she would have nodded approvingly. That's what she taught. That's what she hoped for. A young girl who became a strong woman, who survived the industry that chewed up and spit out so many others, who was still acting, still creating, still herself after all these years. The story of Hayley Mills and Maureen O'Hara is ultimately a story about the invisible bonds between women in Hollywood, the mentorships and friendships that happened off camera but shaped everything that appeared on camera. Hollywood has always celebrated men's mentorships. The directors who took young filmmakers under their wing, the actors who taught the next generation their craft. But women's mentorships have been less visible, less discussed, even though they've been just as important, just as transformative. By speaking openly about what Maureen O'Hara meant to her, Hayley Mills is helping to correct that historical oversight. She's saying, this matters. These relationships between women matter. This passing of knowledge and strength and wisdom from one generation to the next is essential. Mills has noted in recent interviews that she tries to pay forward what O'Hara gave her. When she works with young actors now, she thinks about how to balance honesty with encouragement, how to challenge without crushing, how to prepare someone for the realities of the business without destroying their love for craft. It's not easy. Every young actor is different, responds to different approaches. But Mills feels a responsibility to try to be for someone else what Maureen O'Hara was for her, even if she can't replicate that exact dynamic. And why would she, given that she's a different person with different strengths? She can carry forward the spirit of it, the commitment to excellence, the refusal to accept mediocrity, the fierce protection of talent, the understanding that real mentorship sometimes means being tough because the world is tougher. The revelations that Hayley Mills is sharing at 79 aren't meant to change how people see The Parent Trap or Maureen O'Hara's career. The movie still stands as a delightful family classic, and O'Hara's legacy as one of Hollywood's great actresses remains secure. Rather, Mills is adding depth and context. She's sharing the human story behind the Hollywood story. She's letting us see the real relationships and real growth that happen alongside the make-believe. It's a gift to anyone who has ever wondered what it's really like to be a young performer in Hollywood, what kind of guidance and protection is possible, what difference one strong mentor can make in the life of a vulnerable young artist. There's something especially powerful about Mills choosing to share these reflections now, at 79. She's not trying to revive her career or generate publicity for a new project. She's at a point in life where the career pressures have lessened, where she can look back with clarity and honesty, where she can speak truth without worrying about whose feelings might be hurt or what impact it might have on future opportunities. This is a perspective of a woman who has lived a full life, who has seen the arc of her own story, who understands now what she couldn't have understood at 13 or even at 40. That Maureen O'Hara's greatest gift wasn't just teaching her how to be a better actress, but teaching her how to be a strong person, how to maintain her integrity, how to survive with her humanity intact. The complexity of their relationship, The mix of affection and tension, warmth and challenge, nurturing and demanding, reflects something true about all meaningful mentorships. The people who change us most profoundly are rarely the ones who simply tell us we're wonderful. They're the ones who see our potential and push us toward it, even when that pushing is uncomfortable. They're the ones who believe in us enough to demand more than we thought we had to give. They're the ones who prepare us for battles we don't yet know we'll have to fight. Maureen O'Hara was all of that for Hayley Mills, and Mills's willingness to acknowledge that complexity, to honor both the difficulty and the beauty of what they shared, is itself a kind of maturity that O'Hara would have respected. As Hayley Mills reflects on her own journey from child star to working actress to respected elder of her profession, she can trace so many of the choices she made, so many of the stands she took, back to seeds planted during those months working on The Parent Trap. O'Hara taught her that stardom was fleeting, but craft was forever, that public opinion would shift, but personal integrity was constant, that the industry would try to define her, but only she could determine who she really was. These weren't just abstract lessons. They were practical tools that Mills has used throughout her life, in moments of crisis and moments of triumph, in periods of fame and periods of obscurity. They were the foundation that allowed her to build a life in show business that was long and meaningful and ultimately hers. The truth that Hayley Mills is telling about Maureen O'Hara isn't shocking in a way that so many Hollywood revelations are shocking. There's no scandal here, no betrayal, no hidden cruelty. Instead, there's something rarer and perhaps more valuable, an honest accounting of a complicated relationship that shaped a life, a generous acknowledgement of debt owed to someone who couldn't be repaid, a love letter to a mentor who might not have realized the full extent of her impact. In a culture that often reduces relationships to simple categories, good or bad, positive or negative, supportive or toxic, Mills is offering something more nuanced. She's saying that O'Hara was tough and loving, demanding and protective, intimidating and inspiring, all at once. She's saying that the relationship was hard sometimes and precious always. She's saying thank you, finally and completely, in the only way she knows how, by telling the truth. For those of us watching from the outside, Mills's reflections offer a glimpse into a Hollywood that rarely gets shown. We see the movies, the premieres, the magazine covers, but we don't often see the mentorships, the private conversations, the moments of doubt and encouragement that shape performers' lives. We don't see the women helping other women, the passing of knowledge across generations, the fierce protection that happens away from cameras and audiences. Hayley Mills is letting us see all of that now, through her memories of Maureen O'Hara, and in doing so, she's giving us a richer, more complete picture of what it means to survive and thrive in the entertainment industry. The legacy of Maureen O'Hara extends far beyond her own impressive filmography. It lives in the actresses she mentored, the standards she set, the example she provided of how to be strong without being hard, how to be feminine without being weak, how to succeed in Hollywood without selling your soul. Hayley Mills is one of the clearest examples of that legacy, a testament to what O'Hara's mentorship could accomplish. But Mills herself has noted that she's probably not the only one. How many other actresses did O'Hara help along the way? How many other young women benefited from her wisdom, her protection, her refusal to let talent be wasted or crushed? We may never know the full extent of O'Hara's influence, but Mills's willingness to speak about her own experience opens a door for others to share their stories too. At 79, Hayley Mills has earned the right to tell her story her way. She survived child stardom, scandalous romance, career setbacks, financial difficulties, personal losses, and all the other challenges that come with living a long life in the public eye. She's still acting, still finding joy in performance, still bringing intelligence and depth to every role she takes. And when she talked about Maureen O'Hara now, you can hear in her voice both the 13-year-old girl who is terrified and thrilled to work with such a legend, and the 79-year-old woman who understands, finally and fully, what a gift that experience was. The truth Hayley Mills is telling about Maureen O'Hara is simple and profound. I was shaped by a strong woman who cared enough to be tough with me, who believed in me enough to demand excellence, who protected me while also preparing me for a difficult world. I didn't always appreciate it at the time. Sometimes I resented it, found it overwhelming, wished she would be gentler or less demanding. But looking back across more than 6 decades, I can see clearly that Maureen O'Hara gave me exactly what I needed. She gave me the tools to build a life and a career that has lasted, that has meant something, that has been mine. She gave me the strength I didn't know I would need. She gave me herself in all her complexity and power. And I am forever grateful. That gratitude, expressed honestly and completely after all these years, is perhaps the greatest tribute one artist can pay to another. It's an acknowledgement that we are all shaped by those who came before us, that we carry our mentors with us long after they're gone, that the lessons learned in youth echo through every decade that follows. Hayley Mills is still learning from Maureen O'Hara, still discovering new layers of meaning and memories from 60 years ago, still grateful for the fierce love of a woman who refused to let her be anything less than extraordinary. And so the truth comes out not in a rush of scandal, but in a slow revelation of love and gratitude, of complicated emotion and simple appreciation. At 79, Hayley Mills is finally able to say what she's always known but couldn't quite articulate. Maureen O'Hara changed my life. She made me who I am. She taught me how to be strong. She gave me a gift I'm still using, still cherishing, still trying to pass on to others. She was difficult and wonderful, demanding and loving, intimidating and inspiring. She was exactly what I needed, even when I didn't know I needed it. She was, in all the ways that matter most, family. Not the make-believe family we played on screen in The Parent Trap, but the real family we choose, the bonds we form through shared experience and mutual respect, and the kind of love that demands the best from us because it believes we can give it. That's the truth Hayley Mills has finally told about Maureen O'Hara, and it's a truth worth waiting 60 years to hear.